Sir, this area is for distinguished guests. I'm going to have to ask you to move." The voice was sharp, laced with the kind of impatient authority that only youth can truly muster. It sliced through the humid South Carolina air, thick with the smell of salt water and freshly cut grass. Samuel Croft didn't turn right away, his gaze fixed on the sprawling parade deck of Paris Island where thousands of new Marines stood, ramrod straight in their dress blues as a single magnificent entity. Somewhere among them, in the 3rd Platoon of Echo Company, was his grandson Leo. After all these years, the sight still stirred something deep within him, a phantom echo of discipline, purpose, and a life lived on the razor's edge. His own graduation had been on this very ground a lifetime ago. The sun felt the same, but the world was a different place, and he was a different man. "Sir, did you hear me?" The voice was closer now, its owner stepping into Samuel's peripheral vision, a young captain, no older than 30, with a jaw like carved granite and a uniform so crisp it could have cut glass. The name on his uniform read Hayes. Samuel finally turned, his movements slow and deliberate, like a river nearing the sea. His pale blue eyes, startlingly clear in a face lined with 84 years, met the captain's. He wore a simple faded brown jacket against the morning chill, its zipper worn and cuffs frayed, making him look like someone who had wandered away from a retirement home. "I hear you, Captain," Samuel said quietly, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "I'm just trying to see my boy." He nodded toward the formation. "My grandson." Captain Hayes's eyes performed a quick, dismissive scan of Samuel from his worn shoes to his thin white hair. To him, the old man did not belong in the reserved section alongside colonels, dignitaries, and polished families. "I appreciate that, Grandpa, but the general seating is on the other side of the field. This section is reserved. You understand what reserved means, don't you?" The condescension coated the air like an oily film. Samuel felt a familiar stillness settle over him, the same calm he once found in the heart of a firefight. He had faced down men with knives, guns, and deadly ideologies, all with less arrogance than this young officer. He simply nodded. "I understand, but the view is better from here. I'm old. My eyes aren't what they used to be." "That's not my problem," Hayes snapped, his patience gone. "The rules are the rules. Now are you going to move, or do I need to get the MPs to escort you? We're trying to maintain a certain standard here today." He gestured at the gleaming shoes and decorated uniforms, then at Samuel's simple attire, letting the insult hang unspoken. Samuel didn't reply, only looked at him, expression unreadable. The quiet defiance infuriated Hayes more than any argument could have. His face tightened, his neck flushing a dull red. He saw only senile stubbornness, not dignity. "All right, that's it. Let's go, old-timer." Hayes stepped forward and wrapped his fingers around Samuel's upper arm. The grip was firm, meant to intimidate. But the moment his hand closed on Samuel's bicep, the world tilted. It wasn't the pressure Samuel had endured far worse, but the touch, the sudden uninvited grip of authority, the feeling of being controlled. The manicured green of the parade deck dissolved. The Marine Corps' band faded into a dull roar. The salty air thickened into the scent of mud, decay, and fear. He was back in the jungle, deep in a place not found on any map. Rain dripped from the canopy, each drop a cold shock. The hand on his arm wasn't covered in a white glove. It was grimy, calloused, pressing a rifle muzzle to his ribs. A man whispered threats in a language Samuel understood just well enough to know he was about to die. His training took over. Every muscle went slack yet coiled with potential energy. Stillness was a weapon, patience a shield. You don't fight the current. You wait for the opening. He had waited once for the fractional shift of his captor's weight, and then he had moved. He blinked. The jungle receded. The crisp uniform of Captain Hayes came back into focus. He hadn't moved a muscle, but the memory had surged through him in less than a heartbeat. Samuel looked at the captain's hand on his arm, then into the young man's angry eyes. His own gaze was perfectly calm, but within it lay a depth of cold, ancient knowledge of violence that made Hayes falter. For the first time, the captain felt a flicker of uncertainty. This old man wasn't scared. He wasn't even angry, he was waiting. As Hayes pulled at Samuel's arm with more force, the sleeve of the worn jacket slid up a few inches, exposing the skin of his forearm and with it a tattoo. It was old. The ink faded from deep black to hazy bluish gray, the lines blurred by decades of sun and age. It wasn't a standard eagle, globe, and anchor, nor a girl's name or a date. It was a skull imposed over a 5-pointed star with a serpent coiled around it, a symbol meaningless to 99.9% of the people on the planet. "I'm not going to tell you again," Hayes growled, trying to recover his bravado, but his words were lost to the wind as a shadow fell over them. "Captain Hayes." The quiet voice carried the weight of command like a physical force, freezing both men. Hayes immediately dropped Samuel's arm and snapped to rigid attention. Standing before them was General Morrison, the 4-star general commanding all Marine Corps training and the guest of honor for the day's events. A mountain of a man with a chest full of valorous decorations and a stern face, he approached with his aide a pace behind him. "General, sir," Hayes barked, pale. "This man was in a restricted area, sir. I was just escorting him to the proper seating." But Morrison barely acknowledged him. His gray flint eyes were fixed on Samuel. He began to nod an order to Hayes until his gaze dropped to the old man's forearm and the faded blue-gray tattoo. The general froze completely, breath hitching, color draining from his face. His aide took a half-step forward in concern, but Morrison raised a hand to stop him. The world seemed to shrink, the band, the crowd, the commands fading to a distant hum until there was only the general, the old man in the worn jacket, and the tattoo bridging 50 years between them. Morrison stepped closer, staring from the tattoo to Samuel's clear blue eyes, disbelief and a storm of emotion raging in his own. When he spoke, his voice was a choked whisper stripped of command, filled with something like reverence. "It can't be," he breathed. He looked again at the tattoo, the skull, the star, the serpent, the insignia of ACVSOG, Spike Team Dakota. "They told us you were all gone, that none of you made it back from that last run." Captain Hayes stared, mouth open, lost. MHCVSOG was Ancient History Special Forces from Vietnam. What did that have to do with this confused old man? The general ignored him completely, eyes locked on Samuel. "The ghost," he whispered, barely audible. "The ghost of the Ashau Valley. We read the redacted files at Quantico. We studied your operations. We were told they were embellished, that no single man could have done what the report said you did." He stepped closer until he stood directly in front of Samuel. Then, in full view of hundreds of Marines, their families, and his own staff, the 4-star general brought his heels together with a sharp crack and raised his hand in the slowest, most precise, most heartfelt salute of his life. It was pure reverence. He wasn't saluting a civilian, he was saluting a legend he believed long dead. "Sir," General Morrison said, voice thick with emotion, eyes shining, "it is an honor I never thought I would have in my lifetime." Silence followed. People in the stands turned to watch, drawn by the sight of a 4-star general saluting a disheveled old man. Captain Hayes looked as if struck by lightning, his mind struggling to connect that the frail grandpa he'd manhandled, the old-timer he'd threatened to have arrested, was being saluted by one of the most powerful men in the Marine Corps. Croft simply looked at the general, a flicker of sad recognition in his eyes, and gave a slow, tired nod. "It's been a long time, General," he said quietly. "I go by Samuel now." The general held his salute, his arm trembling with emotion, then turned his flinty eyes to the petrified Captain Hayes, His voice dropped, lethally cold. "Captain, what is your name?" "Hayes, sir." "Captain Robert Hayes," he stammered, rigid with fear. "Captain Hayes," the general said, voice dangerously low. "You had your hands on a living Medal of Honor recipient. A man whose real name is so classified, it's still redacted in the official archives. A man who single-handedly held off an entire NVA battalion for 3 nights to protect a downed pilot. A man this country left for dead because no one believed he could possibly survive." He paused, letting the weight of his words crush the young captain. "That downed pilot," the general continued, his voice cracking, "was my father." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Hayes's pale face turned to ash as the ground seemed to fall away beneath him. He looked at Samuel's steady, forgiving eyes and saw not a feeble old man but a titan, a ghost from history standing before him. "This man," the general boomed, regaining his full command voice, "is not a guest. He is not a visitor. He is a shrine. This ground is hallowed because he is on it. His presence honors us, Captain. Do you understand that?" "Yes, sir," Hayes choked, his arrogance shattered. I didn't know, sir." "I'm so sorry." He turned to Samuel, pleading. "Sir, my deepest apologies." Samuel raised a hand, stopping him with quiet authority. "The boy was doing his job, General," he said calmly. He saw an old man who looked out of place. He was protecting the decorum of the ceremony. There's no fault in that. This grace, this immediate forgiveness, devastated Hayes more than any reprimand could. It showed the vast gulf between his own pride and the monumental character of the man he had disrespected. From the edge of the formation, Leo broke rank and ran toward them. The ceremony just concluded. He rushed to his grandfather's side, confusion and concern on his face. "Grandpa, what's going on? Are you okay?" He glanced between Samuel and the general. He had always known his grandfather was a Marine, but Samuel never talked about it. He said he'd been a mechanic, worked on engines, fixed lawnmowers, told bad jokes. He was just Grandpa. Samuel smiled warmly and placed a gnarled hand on Leo's shoulder. "I'm fine, Leo, just fine. I was just meeting an old colleague's son." General Morrison lowered his salute at last, though his posture remained respectful. He looked at Leo, then Samuel. "Your grandfather is the finest Marine I have never had the honor of serving with," he said. "Everything you learned here, everything you aspire to be, he's the embodiment of it. Honor, courage, commitment." Then he turned to the crowd. "I want everyone to hear this," he called out, gesturing for Samuel to join him on the reviewing stand. Hesitantly, Samuel complied, walking with the slow, steady gait of a man in no hurry. He stood beside the general, looking out at the sea of Marines, his grandson among them. The general recounted the story with passion, speaking of a secret war, of men who fought without recognition, who died without glory, of Spike Team Dakota and their impossible mission to rescue a high-value pilot from a fortified prison, camp deep in enemy territory. He described how the mission failed, how the team was ambushed, how their leader, known only as the Ghost, ordered the survivors to fall back while he covered them. He held out for 72 hours alone, against overwhelming odds, long enough to secure the pilot's rescue before being overrun. He was declared killed in action, awarded the nation's highest honor in secret, his name sealed away. "We believed he was a ghost for 50 years, the general said, voice trembling. "But he is here today. He is with us." A ripple of applause rose and swelled into thunderous ovation as everyone stood the Marines, their families, the officers honoring the quiet old man in the worn brown jacket. Leo stood beside him, tears streaming as he finally understood the burden his grandfather had carried in silence. Later, after the crowds thinned, Samuel sat on a bench with Leo. Captain Hayes approached, hat in hand, face full of shame. "Sir," he whispered, "there's nothing I can say to excuse my behavior. I was arrogant and wrong. I failed to see the man in front of me. I only saw the clothes he was wearing. Samuel looked up, his clear blue eyes holding no malice. A uniform doesn't make a man, Captain, he said softly. It just tells you what job he does. The man is inside. Sometimes you have to look harder to see him. You're a young officer. You have a long career ahead. Learn from this. Learn to see the person, not the rank or the uniform. That's where true strength lies. He patted the bench. Sit down, son. Tell me about yourself. As the sun set over the island, casting long shadows across the parade deck, an unlikely trio sat together, a living legend, a brand new Marine, and a humbled young captain who had just learned the most important lesson of his life. They didn't talk about war or medals, but about family, the future, and the quiet dignity that binds all generations of service. The greatest heroes are often the ones you'd never notice, the quiet souls who carry the weight of the world without complaint, their valor hidden not by secrecy, but by profound humility. They walk among us every day, waiting for us to have the wisdom to see them. If this story reminds you of the quiet heroes in your own life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that honor the unseen giants who walk among us.